Hello, friends and extended family. Today, there's some thoughts running through my head um, about some possible scenarios that might help put things in perspective for mothers. So, um, when a birth mother gives up her child, um, and for the sake of ease, we'll use the standard, young mother coerced into giving up her child for a better life. So they're under the impression that they'll have a better life. We've covered this before. Adoption is trauma. The separation from mother and child is trauma. So that being said, the trauma's done. The birth mother, if she is not a sociopath, will most likely have negative feelings carried forward for the rest of her life, knowing that she gave up a son or daughter, right? That her child is now out in the world beyond her protection, beyond her knowing, out of her sight, all based on someone saying that the child will have a better life. Now, unfortunately, our voices are not heard. The negative feelings we have about adoption, the negative consequences we incur due to the trauma of adoption are not shared. And that being said, if the mother eventually comes to the realization, which I'm sure if she searches her feelings or does any research on adoption, she would discover that she's made a mistake. Now, the fear, from what I've seen of the birth mothers, is that her child couldn't possibly forgive her because chances are, if she's honest with herself, that she'll have a difficult time forgiving herself. But what's also important, I think, for the mothers to know is that, at least for me, growing up, she was already forgiven. There was no way for me to hate or despise my birth mother, no matter what the circumstances, because I imagined them all. All I wanted was an apology, possibly. I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was doing. And, I was under bad influence. I was under bad understandings, bad information. And I made a mistake. And as difficult as it may be, that we need to re-establish this connection for both our sakes. That's it. That's the end of the story. You're forgiven, and whether it takes therapy and a counselor or whatever to try to bridge the gaps in the traumatic feelings, that reconciliation is possible, but you're the parent, you're the mother. The majority of the responsibility is going to fall on you to try and amend this mistake, to try and make it better. Now, unfortunately, we understand how guilt and denial and things work. And it may be impossible for the mother to sit and admit her error. It would be easier to sit and the lie that she gave us a better life. And in some cases, I feel like the mother cuts off the birth child because she subconsciously knows that she would need to take responsibility and admit that she didn't do the right thing for her child. Now, again, there's always fringe scenarios, but I'm talking in generalities here and about feelings. So, we know that something wrong happened. Denying it and invalidating our feelings simply continues the pattern of our lives, whereas our feelings about adoptions have been invalidated throughout the entire scenario. And the cognitive dissonance that we're forced to carry for the sake of the adoptive parents and the birth parents is overwhelming. So, and it appears to be accumulative because in my experience dealing with adoptees, and that includes you folks, and discussing these issues and moving forward, as we move into the other phases of life, into the phases where we're getting to know ourselves, we're getting to discover where we came from, our culture, where our interests leave our own personal needs and start expanding into the larger world, we realize that we've been cut off from not just our families, but our societies, our cultures, our languages, our religions, our roots. And that's a terrible place to be. So that's the basis there. Now I'm going to give a few other examples. Okay, so hopefully people can put things into perspective, because if you stop and think, death is not the worst possible thing, i.e. abortion is not the worst possible thing. But to be adopted into a situation where the child does not connect, does not bond with the new family, well, try to imagine a heart transplant into, a smoker or someone with a horrible lifestyle. Well, that heart may not take to that physical body. And I would say that trying to transplant a human into a family is a much more complicated procedure with many more variables. But at the same token, if you put the child into the environment and it's constantly in the hospital, constantly sick, constantly struggling, with sign upon sign of trauma, distress, etc., well, that child's just left to rot. Could you imagine a transplant into a human body that doesn't take, and you just left it in there? Okay, so there's an analogy. Another analogy, I think about the mothers on the news who drive their children into a lake or drown them in a bathtub. Now, we can all admit, I think, that that's a horrific situation where a mother becomes so disturbed or so in despair that she feels that she needs to take her children's lives. That's hard to look at that. But now let's put ourselves in the children's position. So if the mother attempts to kill the child and succeeds, well, the child's journey is over, and hopefully its spirit is at rest. But what if the child survives? Okay? What if the child survives the mother's decision to kill her child? You know, society will take that child away. Society will try to comfort the child. Your mother was sick. It was this, it was that, blah, blah, blah. But that child will carry with it the rest of its life that the mother tried to kill the child. So, although it's not a direct physical affliction, that feeling within a child will cause physical manifestations and will cause harm and pain for the rest of that child's life. Is this not true? Can we not utilize our emotions and our feelings to see that this would be true? To know that your mother wanted you dead. Even if your mother was sick. That's a big, big burden and a big, big pain to carry for anyone. Anyone. I don't care how well educated, adjusted, mentally sound you may be. You cannot deny that that would be an incredible burden for anyone to bear. So, which is worse? The child that was murdered, that we all feel sorry for, that is now at rest, or the child that needs to carry on, and we think, oh, how lucky that that child survived, because we think that death is the worst possible scenario. Is death the worst possible scenario? Nope, it's not. No, we see a bird on the side of the road in pain and struggling and screaming. It's called a mercy killing. No one should have to suffer that sort of pain. But we've tried to convince ourselves that a mother's love and the loss of is not pain. And I would disagree and say that is probably one of the most incredibly painful things that anyone could possibly bear. So, some things to think about. It doesn't take bravery to ditch your responsibilities, to ditch the challenge of, even if you're in a bad situation, to turn your life around for your child. What more motivation do you need? You have a child. Can you change for that child? Many women quit smoking. That's one of the hardest things to do because they get pregnant and have a child. Right? So, those are some thoughts to kick around today. But all it takes is a little thoughtfulness and a little changing of focus on where the pain lies, where the right and wrong of things lie, and being able to be strong enough, you know, after you've made a mistake, to admit that it was a mistake, regardless of what society will tell you. Because you can hide behind popular opinion. but you can't hide from your own conscience. And, I've had to take a look at my life. I've had to take a look at the mistakes I've made and people I may have harmed in my life and make amends for those things. And I can tell you I sleep a lot better at night. I can tell you it's made me a lot better person. And I can tell you it's given me the ability to stand up for my feelings and for logic and reason. And logic and reason is slowly leaving our world. It's hard to find. And to me, that is my connection. And if logic and reason come back into the world, then I mean you're not going to have to admit your mistakes. They'll be plainly obvious for everyone to see. And I hope that's the new paradigm that we're entering into. And with the advent of the DNA and whatnot, your time is slowly running out to start admitting your mistakes, doing the right thing, and trying to make amends, and trying to heal the damage that's been done as society tries to catch up to the destruction that the adoption practice as it stands today has caused in our world. If you disagree that there's something wrong with adoption, then I guess you need to ask yourself little things like, why will Russia not adopt children to the West anymore? Because there's too many countless cases of those children being murdered and abused. Russia will not adopt children out to us anymore because we murder them and abuse them. So, as a Westerner who grew up thinking Russia was the worst possible place you could be, try to imagine a scenario where, our children are in dire straits and we have no homes for them, but they're better off than sending them to your homes where they'll be abused and murdered. So think about that next time you hear that, someone's giving up their child for adoption or someone's adopting a child. Kick that around a little bit in your head. And the next time you hear that someone says they were adopted, don't let it go to the point of thinking, oh, that's so great. Maybe substitute a new thought in your head. This person lost their entire family in one day, and now they're going to play roll the dice on the Russian roulette of adoption. So there's some thoughts for today. No one's beyond redemption, but the most horrible things can be forgiven. But first you have to admit that you did something wrong, because until you do, you're a liar, and there is no forgiveness if you keep invalidating the person you victimized. Okay, so I'm glad you were all able to join me for that, and I'm sorry if it's a heavy topic or depressing, but within that message there is hope that we can encourage people that it's okay to tell the truth. It's okay that you did something wrong. It's okay that you were in a position where, right and wrong got skewed. You made a mistake. We can understand. We grew up. All we wanted was to come back to our family. A lot of us. Even when we were told we were given a better life, a lot of us still, no matter what your situation, would have come home to the birth family because we didn't feel at home. If you lose your home, what are you going to do? Well, I guess you're going to spend your life trying to find it again. And you know, for myself, maybe a day finally came that there's no home to go back to. I'm a homeless person no matter where I go. So think, just think, think. Goodbye.